So in today's video, I want to talk about how your American mindset can make you miserable while living here in Dominican Republic. And for a matter of fact, any country abroad. So the reason why I want to talk about this topic is because I've seen this thing rear its ugly head over and over and over again, not just here in Dominican Republic, but in places like Colombia, Brazil, Thailand, Philippines. What you always see is Americans taking that American mentality and American mindset over to other countries. Physically, their body is in the foreign country, but mentally, their brain is still operating as if they're in their home country. And this is the number one thing you don't do when traveling. You leave the ways of your country in your country, period, full stop. This doesn't mean leave your common sense behind. There's a difference. But keep in mind, once you set foot in another country, you have no rights. Therefore, you should be conducting yourself accordingly. Now, before I get into how crazy this mentality is, I want you to know I understand it. But just because I understand it doesn't make it any less insane. And why do I understand it? Because if you've been living a certain way for 25 to 45 years, who would even think that you would operate any different than what you're accustomed to once you're in another country? I know I wouldn't, but common sense will tell you, if you notice that you're the only one responding or behaving a certain way in a certain situation in another country, you must realize that at that point, you are the fool. Most of the time when you're in a foreign country, you can almost always tell who the foreigners are, especially when they're Americans, because we take privilege and arrogance to a whole new level. Fighting against or going against a country's norms with your norms is a losing battle and a recipe for frustration, only to leave you miserable during the duration of your visit, especially if you're in what they call a third world country. Now, if you're an American, and say for instance you visit a place like Canada or Australia or the UK, you may see some similarities of how these countries operate in contrast to America. Now, I've never been to the UK or Australia, but I have been to Canada, and I've seen some similarities of how that country operates in contrast to America. But if you're in America and you're going to places like the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Thailand, the Philippines, and even some countries in Africa, these countries operate totally different than how the United States does. I know the DR does because I currently live here in Dominican Republic, and it's up to me to adapt to the culture, not the other way around. Their ways are not your ways, and you need to accept it. I'm not saying that you need to adapt to their ways and mannerism, but you need to understand it, accept it, and move on. You have no say-so to the direction of their culture as a foreigner. Listen, they've been doing things the way they've been doing things for years. And me raising the levels of my blood pressure is not gonna get them to change it. I see people come here and try to push their ways and their norms on the citizens of this country, and I'm telling you, it's not gonna work. I've seen it over and over again. And listen, Dominicans are very welcoming, but they're not gonna accept you as a foreigner coming into their country trying to change it, no matter if it's better for them or not. They're just not gonna accept it. Regardless of the narrative that's pushed on Americans about America being the best country in the world, there are countries that disagree with that statement, and they absolutely despise Americans and their culture. I'm not saying Dominican Republic is one of these countries, but what I am saying is you're not as special and welcoming as you may think around the world. So when you get into these countries, lose the attitude, lose the arrogance, because it can and will get you in trouble, and at very least make your stay in these foreign countries very miserable. So one of the things that helped me settle in here in Dominican Republic is just that. I lost the arrogant attitude. Not that my attitude was over the top, but as an American, we do feel a certain type of privilege when we visit these other countries. So what I did was I just stopped allowing the small things that were not normal to me bother me. And once I did that, I started really enjoying the culture. I stopped criticizing every little thing, and not that I was really over the top with my criticism, but there were things inside of me as an American saying, you know what, in America, they wouldn't do this, or it would be this way, playing off that American programming that everything about America is right and everybody else is wrong. Again, none of this was playing out in real time, just only in my mind. But even getting rid of those little thoughts has made my time here that much more enjoyable. I've heard and listened to many stories from expats and tourists about their dissatisfaction with being in Dominican Republic or visiting the Dominican Republic. And I can say that 80% of their complaints were their dissatisfaction with the country's cultural norms. Listen, guys, the American way is not always the right way. And just because we've been doing something for so long doesn't mean that it's the right way. It's just something that we've become accustomed to. Listen, when we travel, we need to humble ourselves and appreciate the culture and the beauty of these countries. Most of the time, the people of these countries are warm and welcoming, and for me, that's just the start of an amazing vacation or amazing life if you decide to relocate, that the people are welcome. So I just wanted to hop on real quick to let you know that that American mindset will make you miserable when you visit these other countries. I'm telling you, understand the world does not operate like America. So I wanted to be that voice of reasoning. Learn and educate yourself on your country of interest, and remember the old saying, while in Rome, you do as the Romans do. Until then, remember, always live in the present, because that is the only way that you can live your best life. I'm out.
Je begot aan mijn best life, yeah. Je begot aan mijn best life, yeah. Something you and me, oh. Je begot aan mijn best life, yeah. Jumping, flexing, no.